I want to take a moment to remind students of all ages and all backgrounds that subjects like math, like physics, like chemistry are not supposed to be hard. You're not supposed to be a genius to study these fields and to understand the ideas, the concepts, and the implications that come from knowledge in these fields. I think there's a social tendency to look at something and want to assume we know more than we do right this moment. And when we make an assumption that we know something that we in fact do not know, when we try to think about that thing, it's hard. It's hard because pieces are missing. We don't see the full picture because we literally do not know clearly what we should be thinking about. So you talk about something like the fourth dimension. You talk about something like vectors, gravity. Talk about something like quadratic equations, linear equations. You get down to something such as an integer, or even as simple as just adding and subtracting. And those are all ideas and concepts that we have to communicate clearly what the idea is, how to think about these things, the perspective we have to be looking at them from to understand each other, and the idea of a typical math class, which this is not implemented well in America. But the idea of a typical math class should ideally be one where we communicate to people how to look at these ideas, how to think about these ideas, and then as an additional component out of the psychofunctionality, we then talk to people about how to do operations like adding and subtracting. But before you try to do an operation like adding and subtracting, we want to make sure that we understand the concept of putting things together, taking things apart, undoing something that we've previously done, and so on. So the the short of the idea I want to get across is that very complicated topics and subjects and concepts are not supposed to be unachievable. You should be able to understand these ideas, but you have to start by taking small steps toward understanding those ideas. This is what leads many people to either loving calculus or disliking calculus. People love calculus when the foundation of arithmetic, algebra, geometry, trigonometry all come together. They understand those fields well, and in calculus, you put skills from all of those fields together to solve larger, more complex problems. And people love calculus when they have a strong foundation in all of those previously covered math fields. But people hate calculus or find it very challenging, not usually because calculus itself is hard, but a typical calculus question will take components of those previous fields, such as geometry, algebra, and arithmetic, and challenge your knowledge for all three of those to understand a question that might be a calculus question. So when people struggle with calculus, they're really struggling maybe with their knowledge of geometry or their knowledge of algebra. So that's the idea I want to pose to you, that you can understand anything, but you have to go back to the beginning and make sure you understand the basics first.